guys, welcome back to Bad Hombre Garage. Thanks for checking it out. Before I forget, hit the subscribe. You don't want to miss future episodes, but follow along today as we assemble this chassis finally for the final time. Hey guys, back in the garage. Pretty excited to be back working on the old Model A. You guys remember last time we got the frame painted. The rear axle's over here, it's painted. So I'm really excited today. I'm going to take my rear suspension bars and clean those up, get some paint on those, and then the next step is going to be to tear into the front axle and front suspension. Try to tear it down and prep that for paint, because I'm excited to have everything painted and start putting the chassis together. So follow along. Okay, so here are my bars for my 4-link in the rear, triangulated 4-link. Bottoms, tops, long ones on the bottom, short ones on the top. I took the end links off, just unscrewed them, and these things are now ready to be cleaned up to paint. While I'm doing that, I'm looking over here at the front axle and I realize I should just rip these hairpins off, a couple bolts each, yank those suckers off, clean those up, and paint them at the same time, and then maybe even go over here and pull the leaf spring off, perhaps the panhard bar on the front. And maybe I'll just paint all that stuff at the same time, since I got to kind of move things around in here to not overspray the frame and everything. Okay, so I ripped my hairpins off. You can see here they are, looks like, try to get close, but it looks like somebody painted it with a brush at some point, because this is terrible even according to my standards. So I got my panhard bar for the front, rear links, front hairpins. I'm going to try to preserve like this chrome end link here. I'll just clean that up and mask that. With all these other end links, I'm just gonna paint it. Some of these I might have to clean up a little where I got some black paint on them before, but I'm going to knock that out real quick. Get myself some way to set up over there and paint. And then I'll paint it, spray it, and while that's drying I'll go back into the front axle and start tearing it down a little bit further to see what else I can paint. So I gotta do less talking, more cleaning, and we'll see if we can get some paint on this stuff. Okay, here's how I'm gonna prep this stuff for paint. Start with, I find some Scotch-Brite, go through my used stuff. I feel like Johnny Cash going through his closet for his cleanest dirty shirt, but I find one that's pretty good. Wear my rubber gloves so I don't get oils from my hand all over this when I'm ready for it to be painted. And I'll just go through and knock off all the stuff off the surface. Get the end as well. And I'll just go through and do that for each one of these. You can see, like on my panhard bar, my wiring wheel I was working did a real nice job of cleaning up the hardware on the end. So now all I got to do is just knock this stuff down on the big stuff for the smaller stuff off of the bar itself. Like that. I'll come in with a little bit of masking tape, and I'm going to mask off the hardware. And then I'm going to go rig myself up a way to paint here in the garage, because it's nice and warm in here. I got to heat it up. But there's about 6 inches of snow on the ground outside, so I'll have to set a place up there where I won't overspray the frame and the rear axle, and yeah, get busy. Oh, the one thing I'm going to do after this is I'm going to hit it with some solvent, knock off any of the grease or anything like that, and I'll hang it up through by a wire through there. Prime it, paint it. Hopefully have it done by the time my lunch hour's over here, so it can dry while I go back to work. Well, welcome to the Bad Hombre Garage paint booth. You can see I got a little creative with my ladders, but I hung up all my links on here. And then what I did is I took my torch and I just went over the main pieces of them with the torch. Knocked some of the moisture out of it. So they're clean, they're warm, no moisture in them, they're prepped. I'm going to go ahead and hit them with some primer and then let that set up, and then we'll hit it with some black paint. We'll call that good. I got primer on there. Open the door, let the fumes out a little bit. I got the heat cranked back up now, and I'm going to try to let it heat for a little bit here. Go in and have a little bit of lunch. Maybe have time to come out and spray a layer of black paint on these, or two, and have this wrapped up for today, at least as part of the project. Alrighty guys, back at it. You can see there I got my parts all hung up and painted, and they're dry, so they're ready to come down from there. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to rip this apart a little bit. Now, there we go. Now you can see, that's as far as I'm going to take it. I'm going to come in here now, I'm going to clean this up, clean up my pieces, my bat wings, my shock mounts, and then I laid my spring over here on my table. Oh, there we go. Laid my spring over there on the table. So then I can come over here and I can work on that a little bit. Hey guys, welcome back. It's another night. Back in the garage. When I left off, last thing I did was I painted all my front end parts. I even painted the front axle. So everything's painted. I'm pretty stoked because my suspension parts are all painted. Now they just need to be put together and put back on the car. So I got a little bit of time tonight, so I'll do that. It's kind of a mess in here. So I got to clean off my workbench so I have a workspace. And then I got just overspray all over the ground and stuff. So I really want to get the suspension put back in the car so I can roll it out, muck out my garage, and then roll this thing back in, clean it up, and start putting the drivetrain in it. So, all right, that's the plan for tonight. I'll see if I can get some of this, at least this front end, put together. Okay, what I'm starting with here are my rear links. I have a triangulated 4-link with my shorter upper bars and my longer bottom bars. And really I don't have to get too scientific, I just want it close. And I know before I took it apart to paint, I had it dialed in pretty good. So I set them over here very scientifically. Driver side, passenger side, top, bottom. So I'll take my driver side top bar and just screw it in here. And this will get me pretty close. What I'm going to do after I get this whole thing put together is I'll draw some square lines on my carport floor, on the garage floor, and then I can measure, you know, fore, aft, left and right, and make sure the suspension is all set up square. But you can see I got quite a bit of adjustability with this. Alright, so I had one fella ask me if I could show some detail on how my suspension mounts. And wasn't sure exactly what he wanted, so we'll just kind of walk through it. I'll show you here in the rear first. So like I said, triangulated 4-link, okay, which means I'm going to have 2 bars on the bottom that'll kind of run parallel with the frame, and then I have 2 bars on top that'll come in at an angle, form a triangle, okay? So that keeps my frame located left, right, as well as fore and aft. And we'll start here with the top bars. You can see I had to come in and I had to weld in these mounts right here for my top bar, and those will run underneath and tie in right here. Same thing on this side, and that'll come in, tie in right here. And then the bottom links come in underneath, and the front will tie in here obviously, and then that'll latch in right here on the axle and locate it both directions. So in theory, I should be able to just roll that thing under there, slide those bars in, take my pocket full of bolts, slam some bolts in there, and have my rear axle hung. I'll have to put my shock spacers. I'm gonna run a coil over shocks on this thing, which would be from here down to the shock mount there. But I don't have my coilovers yet, so I've got some big spacers that some Unistrut or something else that I've been using. So I'll just stick those in there with some bolts. That'll be a good start. So I'm going to set it up on the tripod here and zip this thing together. So that was a pain in the butt. No wonder it takes us so long to build hot rods. If that 5-minute task ended up taking me 20. But you can see how the bars go. Okay, triangulated tops, a little bit triangulated bottom too. I guess I didn't realize just how much they kicked out. I guess they followed the frame, but there you go. Rear bars are in. I'll put my fake coilover shocks in so that it'll ride. And then it's about time to put kids to bed, so calling it tonight. Tomorrow's project's going to be take all these front axle pieces, front suspension pieces, and put them on there. Then it's real easy to swing that sucker over, put it under the frame, and then I can roll this thing out of the garage, sweep this mess, clean this mess up, roll it back in, and go from there. All right, that's done. I'm calling it for tonight. When we come back tomorrow, we'll do more assembly. All right. Hey guys, back out in the garage for a little while anyway. I left off getting my rear suspension kind of mocked up on the car. Today I pulled the parts out that I painted for the front suspension. So I've got a little bit of time involved here. I got to pull the tape off, the masking off. I want to come in and I want to clean up each of my front suspension components. Like these pieces here, kind of, they'd been painted before. It honestly looks like this thing was painted with like some Pore 15 or some of that rust inhibitor stuff with a brush, because it's pretty sloppy. But I'm going to clean up some of this that doesn't need it, the paint on it. And then once I get all this stuff done, we can put this front suspension together, bolt it all back on the axle, and then slide it under the front of the car. So we'll see how far I get today before something else comes up. Hopefully I get some of this knocked out. Okay, so I've got my front suspension, the spring kind of mocked up about as good as I can here on the bench. I went ahead and put a little bit of my loop plate on these bolts that go through, because there's no metal bushing on the inside, it's just a rubber bushing in there. I don't know if that's the right lubrication. Do me a favor, put a little comment down there at the bottom. Let me know what you guys would do with rubber bushings, whether you put a little lube in there or dry. I'm sure for 10 people, there's probably 10 different opinions, but that's what I'm going to do. It seems like it makes sense. My next step now is going to be, I got to tighten these up, to take all this stuff and put it over on the axle and try to zip it all together on the axle. Okay, so now this is kind of all upside down and backwards, but you can see I got everything at least stuck in, right? My bat wings are on, hairpins bolted on. They're not tight, but they're bolted on each side. I don't know if you can tell, but there's an angle to this one, so there's a left and a right where it goes in and buttons up to the frame. My bat wings, obviously they bolt through here with this big shock tie down, or I'm sorry, spring tie down, and I left that loose because that once everything's in and tightened it down, then my bat wing left and right and all that's ready. Once I get this swung over and bolted on the car, then I'll put on my steering box, because it shoots, I believe, right through there, and then I have a panhard bar which I'll come back to that and talk about that in a minute. But this is good, this is exciting. I'm about to swing this over, bolt it onto the frame. It's going to attach 3 places, right? Once right there on that hairpin mount. Okay, same thing on the other side that hangs down. And then the spring will go right into the cross member and locate there on that hole. Okay, well, check it out. Front end's together. I've got a couple of things to button up and I'm going to talk about here in just a second. And I've got a lot of tightening of things to do. I didn't tighten everything down, mainly because I didn't want to have you on the tripod over there while I'm just bending over butt cracking everybody, tightening up all these bolts. So you guys can just imagine that if you want. But before I can call this done, I've got to tighten up all my mounts, get my center pin to pop all the way through, tighten up my hairpins, bat wings, everything. But it's on, it's all centered, and check it out, it rolls. Okay, the last thing I'm going to button up here, and I told you guys I'd talk about this a little bit, panhard bar. Okay, so I've got ties to the frame there, and then ties into the axle over there. Now, is a panhard bar required? That's the question. Is a panhard bar required? Well, no, because there's lots of cars out there running around without a panhard bar in the front, straight axle setup like this. And if you wonder why, it's obvious. You guys, some of you will know this better than I do. But check it out. If you have the triangulation here and here, and it's centered here, and the spring's tied in, it's not going to want to move left-right at all. And that's what the panhard bar does, is it prevents it from going left-right. It keeps it stable. And you can see, without it hooked up, I mean, that sucker's stable. But nonetheless, this setup came with a, well, the hot rod that I bought came with a panhard bar setup in there. And I would just say the trick is, when you do hook one up, just like any good off-roader would tell you, make sure that it is parallel so that it doesn't screw up your geometry, so that when if it's too long, it's going to make the frame cycle left-right as you hit bumps and the suspension cycles up and down. So just make sure it's as level as everything else at ride height. Yeah, that's it. All right, until next time, like, share, please share, subscribe. Oh, please subscribe. It helps me out a bunch. I do appreciate those of you who have subscribed so far. Like, share, subscribe. Be kind to everybody. Build the community. Take some time with the family. Get through this time right now. And come back again to see what happens next. Thanks.